All right, let's turn our focus to this now. Johannesburg Water has sounded the alarm, warning residents in some parts of Johannesburg, including the CBD, not to drink their tap water after reports of a strong and unusual smell. The utility has swiftly isolated the supply in affected streets, including Albertina Sisulu Road and 10th Street, while running laboratory tests to determine the source and the extent of the contamination. Tankers have been deployed to provide water, as officials urge caution, stressing that residents should avoid consumption until further notice. We unpack this further and what this means for public health and accountability with WaterCAN Communications Manager Jonathan Erasmus. Jonathan, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. So now Johannesburg Water has sounded this alarm. Last I spoke to you, you had done your own series of independent tests too on the water that is being consumed. So how serious is this contamination, Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for reaching out to me and us at WaterCAN. I'm the communications manager, and one of the we did run a series of our own tests. That was through our water testing campaign that we ran earlier, not just a couple of months ago, and we released the findings of that report in the beginning part of December. And what we found in that report was, generally speaking, we've got a water crisis in our rivers, dams, and several taps. So we found a bacterial load very high across these spectrums, and this really impacts health, and this impacts confidence in the water system. So this latest event, I think it's really happened in the areas that include Albertina Sisulu Road and the surrounding streets, namely the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th Avenues, as well as 10th Street. You know, this latest thing, I think, just goes to the point that we do have a crisis in provision of potable water. What is positive about this is that Johannesburg Water did launch precautionary water tests. They've done what we would have asked immediately if one of our members had found it. They've also tried to isolate where the fault is, and they've issued a notice. This is a thing that we at WaterCAN often do. If we find water that is problematic, we immediately request municipalities or the Water Service Authority to issue those notices. But once again, as said earlier, this really highlights the crisis that we are facing, not just in Johannesburg, by the way, countrywide, with the provision of clean, potable water.
And that is quite, scary, Jonathan, when you consider the risks it poses, for public health. Speak to us in the interim, in the immediate sense. We know, of course, that Johannesburg Water has issued out water tankers, but how should residents in the interim protect themselves, and what avenues do they have?
Look, yeah, that's always difficult ones. Obviously, get the water from the water tankers if you can, purchase water if you're able to. Otherwise, what we often ask municipalities to do is issue boil notices. So boil the water. That's the quickest, surest way to get rid of any kind of bacteria that may be sitting in there. That is the immediate thing for anyone to do. And just once rely on the sensors. The sensors are probably our greatest weapon that we have. If it smells funny, if it looks funny, it probably is funny. And just rely on your own common sense before drinking any water that you've given. And of course, as I said earlier, just boil it, make sure it's clean. Just keep that water as clean as possible and try to find alternative sources until you get notified that your regular source through your tap is back to normal.
So let's then talk about the systemic issues in as far as Johannesburg's water infrastructure is concerned, that is continuing to contribute to these contamination alerts that we are seeing. Let's start perhaps with just some of the recommendations that you have made following your own testing and what actually your testing has found.
So what we did is we work we have volunteers across the country, excuse me there, and we work on the premise of encouraging citizen science. So in effect, encouraging citizens to do their own water testing. And then what WaterCAN has done is we've developed a very simple to use water test kit that I can teach you within 3 to 5 minutes, or you can watch our YouTube video on our website that'll show you how to use it. And B is massively cost effective. So normally, if you go and do a lab test through any kind of laboratory across the country, you're looking at about 3,500 Rand upwards per test to look for bacterial load in the water. what we've done is we've got our test kits, which really we even just sell to the public for about 250, 300 rand, depending on the quantity, and which has severely brought down the cost. But even better still is we have funders that support us and continue to support us, and a number of donors as well that allow us to distribute these kits freely across the country. And that's a huge game changer, because what we've been able to do is we've been able to empower vulnerable communities that normally would not have access to such a tool at their disposal. So, and it's more than just a water testing kit. It's really an empowerment tool. It gives power to people that normally wouldn't have it, and allows them to hold their authorities to account. Now, what our kits have done is it's allowed people to find out, usually they'll come to us when there's a problem. Now, it's allowed them to hold municipalities to account. So one in particular is Witzenberg municipality. This was our most recent one. It's in the Western Cape, a town called Selbach, where one of our volunteer testers found a high bacterial load in their water, notified us immediately, and we then went through the process of notifying the municipality. As of the 24th of December, the municipality, in combination with the Department of Water and Sanitation, the National Department, issued a press statement basically saying that they are working around the clock to provide clean water to the area of Witzenberg. Just from that one simple test, or it was a series of tests really, but from those simple tests that we did with our citizen science test kits, we were able to launch a series of actions from the municipality to the national department to make sure that water is safe. So that's what our kits do. That's what it empowers to do. And yes, we have this crisis, and it's everywhere, and we can go from municipality to municipality and find it. But it's really the empowerment factor that is the game changer, and allowing people to understand and really understand what's wrong with their water. Not just be told it's something, but to actually understand the science behind it.
And I want to stay with this, citizen data that you have initiated. What will it take, for municipalities, for officials to integrate that data into decision-making even faster than what we are currently seeing? Because it is quite frustrating at this stage when so many residents, particularly just days after a major infrastructural maintenance, project, that you still have these issues of contamination and water shortages.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really works. It depends on the municipality or the Water Service Authority whether they want to integrate this information. Our data is freely available. It's on our site. We don't hide anything. We also don't hide behind how we get the data. We'll freely answer any questions on how our test kits works and the science that is behind them. So if they want it, they're more than welcome to use it. But what we're certainly finding it as effective is the citizen science testing kits are a great first line of defense and knowledge for communities. So they're able to do these testings at a very low cost, and in many cases free, because we provide them to them. And then from that point, they're able to escalate. So one of the barriers, besides the cost, which was always significant, we can't hide from the cost, but one of the other barriers that communities felt or were forced to kind of reckon with was they would tell the municipality, oh, my water stinks, or my water is this. And often they'd just be ignored, and the municipality would say, well, what evidence do you have? And that's where it would often end. And this case that's happened in Johannesburg, the kind of turnaround's been relatively quick, where someone complained about smelly water, and the right action has come into place. But that's mainly due to sustained pressure in Johannesburg Water realizing that it must respond rather than ignore.
Yeah.
But in most cases, the ignoring happens. So this allows the community member to say, but according to our test, and here are the results that you can take a look at, this is what the water is doing. Yeah. And I think that's been significant. So that's where its use is very strong. We would love them to integrate it into their testing regimes, but that's, as said, up to each municipality.
So my question was, what will it take to change municipalities? So you're suggesting then that municipality residents, in fact, take the power back in their hands using the data that is already available on your website. Looking at that kind of intervention, and supposedly it does happen, let's talk then in terms of long-term reform. What would you like to see as WaterCAN, given just the evidence and the transparency that you've been able to provide municipalities, what would it take then for these reforms and the investment that we urgently need to get back into municipalities?
So I think last week there was a question answered in Parliament where it said the backlog of water infrastructure in this country is in the region of 400 billion, and that's excluding the cost of, that's the maintenance backlog, and that's excluding mini metros and a number of water service, number of boards. So yeah, besides the actual huge cost that it's going to take to repair our system and build trust, I think that the big thing is greater transparency, greater accountability. At the very least, municipalities should make sure that they are open and public about their testing regimes, making sure that data is published regularly and free and allow everyone to see it. I think that would really go a long way into change how we interact with the local government. And in some respects, I think that there should be perhaps changes in legislation at a higher level, perhaps, that forces that type of action. You know, if you look at a number of parts of like the Municipal Finance Management Act, for instance, there's a section 75, which doesn't necessarily deal with water, but what it does do is it requires municipalities to make a whole lot of information public. And in many instances, they just simply don't do it. And I'd imagine within the kind of the water framework as well, there's a requirement to do it, but in many instances, it's just not done. So we need to see much more consequence, certainly at a higher level. We need to see municipal managers and deputy municipal managers in charge of the water portfolio to act and, well, obviously to force them to act. And if they fail to act, some kind of consequence that says so.
Yeah.
Whatever the consequences, whether it's jail time or whether it's, you know, making taking away their performance bonuses or anything of the like, or being blacklisted somewhere, whatever it is, that needs to happen. And until we start seeing that, until there's some kind of accountability and consequence at that higher level, then we're not going to see any real change.
Yeah, Jonathan, thank you so much for your insights. I really do appreciate it. WaterCAN's Communications Manager, Jonathan Erasmus there.